Imagine you're standing in a grocery store at the end of the month with exactly $17 in your checking account, and you need to decide whether to buy the small box of rice that costs $3.50 or the bulk bag that costs $9 and would last you 3 times as long. The math is obvious. The bulk bags save you money in the long run, but you can't afford to think long-term when you're not sure if you'll have gas money tomorrow. So you buy the small box, pay more per ounce, and walk out knowing you just made the expensive choice because you couldn't afford the cheap one. This is not a failure of intelligence or discipline. It's a structural tax on being poor that most people never see until they've lived it. There's a hidden economic principle that operates in silence across every layer of the financial system, and it works like this. The less money you have, the more everything costs, not just in perception, but in actual dollars. It's embedded in fee structures, interest rates, time taxes, and access thresholds, and it compounds in ways that aren't visible on a single receipt, but devastate over years. The poorest household in America pay more for the same gallon of milk, the same car insurance, the same pair of shoes, and the same loan than someone earning twice as much, and none of it is accidental. Let's start with the most obvious layer, which is banking fees. If you maintain a minimum balance of $1,500, most banks waive your monthly maintenance fee. If you don't, you pay $12 a month just to have a checking account. That's $144 a year, paid exclusively by people who don't have $1,500 to leave untouched. Overdraft fees follow the same logic. If you overdraft by $5 because a charge it one day early, you pay $35. Someone with a buffer never pays that fee. Over time, low-income households pay billions annually in fees that wealthier households avoid entirely, not because they manage money better, but because they have more of it to begin with. Then there's credit. If your credit score is 720, you can get a car loan at 4% interest. If it's 590, the same loan costs you 11%. On a $20,000 car over 5 years, that difference is more than $4,000. You're paying extra not because you borrowed more, but because you had less margin for error in the past. Insurance works the same way. People in lower-income zip codes pay more for car insurance, even with identical driving records, because actuarial models tie premiums to income proxies. The system charges more to protect people with less, which means financial vulnerability itself becomes a multiplier. Now let's talk about time. Time is the most regressive tax in the economy because it's invisible on paper but crushing in practice. If you don't have a car, a 15-minute commute becomes 90 minutes on 2 buses. That's an extra 2.5 hours a day, which over a year is nearly 40 full days spent just getting to work. You can't use that time to build a side income, learn a skill, or rest enough to think clearly. You're spending your scarcest resource, time, because you couldn't afford the upfront cost of a vehicle. Even laundry becomes a time tax. Without a washer and dryer, you pay $8 per load at a laundromat and spend 3 hours every week doing something that takes 20 minutes at home for someone who could afford the appliance. Then there's bulk purchasing, which we touched on earlier. Middle and upper income households buy in bulk and pay less per unit for everything from toilet paper to canned goods. They have the cash flow and storage space to optimize per unit cost. Lower income households buy small quantities more frequently and pay a premium on every single purchase. Over the course of a year, this alone can cost hundreds of dollars. The same logic applies to appliances. A cheap $50 pair of work boots falls apart in 4 months. A $200 pair lasts 3 years. The person who can't afford the upfront cost ends up spending more over time. This is what author Terry Pratchett called the Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness, and it applies to nearly every category of consumption. Healthcare follows the same structure. Without insurance, a routine prescription might cost $120. With insurance, it's $15. Emergency room visits become the default for people without primary care access, and they're billed at rates 10 times higher than a scheduled clinic visit would have been. Dental work gets delayed until it becomes an emergency extraction instead of a cleaning. Vision problems go uncorrected, which affects job performance, which affects income. Poor health becomes expensive health, and expensive health keeps people poor. Even housing, the largest monthly expense for most people, is more expensive when you're poor. Renting costs more per square foot than owning in most markets, but you need a down payment, closing costs, and creditworthiness to buy. So you rent indefinitely, building someone else's equity while your own net worth stays flat. You might pay $1,600 a month in rent for a place that would cost $1,100 a month to own, but you're locked out of ownership by the upfront cost. Over a decade, that's $60,000 transferred to someone who already had capital. Let's zoom out. All of these mechanisms, fees, interest rates, time taxes, bulk pricing, healthcare, housing, are not separate issues. They're part of a system that extracts wealth from the bottom and compound it at the top. The term for this is economic friction, and it's highest where velocity is lowest. In other words, the people moving the slowest financially face the most resistance. Every interaction with the economy costs them more, which slows them further, which raises the cost again. It's a feedback loop, and it doesn't require conspiracy or malice. It's just math inside a structure that rewards capital and charges for its absence. This is why poverty is not symmetric to wealth. Escaping poverty is not the same as building wealth in reverse. Wealth compounds through ownership, access, and optionality. Poverty compounds through fees, penalties, and closed doors. The distance between them is not linear, and the psychological cost is just as real. Financial stress shortens decision-making horizons, increases cognitive load, and reduces bandwidth for long-term planning. It's not that poor people make worse decisions. It's that they're making decisions under conditions that penalize error more harshly and offer fewer second chances. Understanding this doesn't fix it overnight, but it changes how you see the economy. It stops being about individual virtue and starts being about structural design. And once you see the design, you can start navigating it differently. You start recognizing which costs are unavoidable and which are leverage points. You begin to distinguish between being frugal and being trapped. And hopefully, you start asking better questions, not just about your own finances, but about how the system allocates cost and who it's designed to serve.